Good morning, everyone. It is 9:05 a.m. on Wednesday, September 14th. I'm going to call to order the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board meeting. Raymond, would you do roll call, confirm a quorum, and then let me know if we have any public comments, please?
Yes, ma'am. Joyce Wilson.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Joe Wardy is out today. Sissy Bird is not in just yet. Mr. Reyes.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
And Laura Enriquez could not make it today either. We do have a quorum, though, with 4.
Thank you. Any public comment?
None received.
Okay, good. So then I'll move to item number 2, which are adoption of the minutes from the previous board meeting of August 10th. Are there any comments or amendments to the minutes that have been presented? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 3, presentation, discussion, and action on a board resolution to select one or more firms pursuant to the CRRMA's request for qualifications for indefinite deliverable contracts dated June 27th, 2022, and to authorize the executive director to begin contract negotiations with the selected firms.
Good morning. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. As read into the record, we do have a procurement before us today, and I've got a PowerPoint to share with you all. So this is what we're going to go through today. This is the 2022 request for qualifications for indefinite deliverable contracts. So these are the agenda items. We'll talk about the purpose of the procurement, the process timeline, the number of submittals received, the scoring criteria, the selection committee, and the committee rankings, and then result in a request for board action.
Excuse me, Raymond, can
Yes,
you
sir.
get that, can you get that pop up off that screen?
Yeah, there's like
I'll ask IT.
microphone warning. It's not on the other ones, but on other.
There it goes.
Okay, thank you, IT. So the purpose of this IDC procurement is to replace the former IDC, so indefinite deliverable contracts. This program is really intended to serve as a way for the RMA to bring on several engineering firms. So then when we have projects, we can just rotate through them as opposed to doing an individual procurement each time we have a design project. So that's the point of the project. This will be I wanted to say the second or potentially the third time that we've done this IDC procurement. The last time we did it was 3 years back. In that rotation, we've awarded just over $16 million worth of projects. So this procurement is the same as the last one in terms of the professional engineering services that we will be looking for, and the examples are shown there on the screen. They include everything from surveying to schematic, public involvement, PS&E, project management, and administration. Really, the intent is to put it out there as broadly as possible so that if anything comes up, we have the ability to go through our IDC program and pull an engineering firm in and begin work. So that's the intent. Here's the timeline for this particular procurement. Back in June on the 8th, we established the scoring criteria through the RMA board. As you know, when we have a procurement, the board provides that scoring criteria through a resolution, so that was done on June 8th. By June 27th, we had issued the request for qualifications. I would mention, too, that this process, because we anticipate using federal funds on one or several of the eventual procurements or eventual design activities, we do have TxDOT input, oversight, and review, so they have been involved in each of these steps. So the RFQ was issued back in late June. By July 8th, we completed the Q&A process. That's where the firms that receive or are interested in the procurement, they send in questions, anything that wasn't clear in the procurement, and then we provide answers by July 8th. We did receive by July 18th, which was the due date, we received 10 submittals. By August 24th, we had the selection committee meeting, and those are the folks that helped us review and develop a recommendation in terms of ranking the submittals, and we'll talk about them here in a moment. And of course, today we're looking for you all to select the teams and authorize staff to go out and negotiate with those teams for the latest round of IDC teams. October and November, we hope to be back with the actual master agreements with the IDC firms. So this process looks very much like the GEC process in that we will have a master agreement with each of the firms that we agree to move forward with. And then as the projects come up, we will issue work authorizations for each task. These are the submittals that we received. Again, I mentioned we received 10. These are in alphabetical order. AECOM, you'll recognize a number of these names: CEA, Civil Associates, Consor, DEC, which is formerly Dannenbaum. I believe you all would remember them by that name. HDR, Hewitt Zollers, Moreno Cardenas, Rodriguez Transportation Group, and Texas Infrastructure Development Group. So those were the 10 submittals received. These are the scoring criteria that were approved by board resolution back in June. So experience and ability of the firm was 40% of the scoring, while approach to the services was 30%, and the proposed staffing was 30%, totaling 100%. This is the selection committee. Sal Alonso from El Paso County, Michelle Garcia from the town of Horizon City, and lastly, Sheetal Patel from TxDOT. So I want to thank them all publicly. It was a lot of work to review 10 submittals. So I really appreciate their work reviewing them and coming together in the selection committee. So the way that works is each of them received the 10 submittals, they review them, they begin their scoring, and then we met the selection committee with TxDOT oversight again, and they discuss the submittals and that sort of thing. So a lot of work was put in by these folks, so I really appreciate their work on this. These are the recommended rankings for the top 4. Consor as number 1, AECOM as number 2, DEC, which is formerly known as Dannenbaum, number 3, and HDR Engineering. So the recommendation from staff is that out of the 10, we proceed with these 4 for the rotation within the IDC pool. That's the recommendation today. So this is the motion. I moved through that very quickly, so please, if you have any questions, just let me know. We can go back to any of those slides. But the requested board action in the end would be a motion to approve the selection committee's rankings and authorize the executive director to begin negotiations with the top 4 ranked firms, provided that the resulting master agreements and subsequent work authorizations will be returned to the board for review and approval. And in your backup, you have a resolution that effectuates that motion. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple quick questions. First of all, did the resolution specify only selecting 4?
It did not. We
Okay.
left it very broad this time.
Okay. And do you feel comfortable at this point that 4 is sufficient,
Yes,
given
ma'am.
sort of some of the volume of activity we're talking about doing down the road potentially?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then within the ranking, were these 4 clearly delineated above the others in terms of consistency of scoring? Or were there, I'm just like
Sure.
a lot of close.
Sure. So the breakout of the scoring, the top 3, there was a big break between the top 3 and the 4th.
Okay.
But then the 4th was still, I want to say, at least 1 point ahead of the 5th.
Okay,
So
that's
there was a
fine.
delineation. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's fine.
And how long is this agreement?
3
What's the term?
years.
3
Another
years.
3 years. Yes, ma'am. So the idea there is that we don't want to keep them on too long. We want to have this out in the public again in 3 years so that additional firms have the opportunity to work with us. And we have the opportunity to work with others.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So the ones that were not selected, have they been notified prior to this board meeting?
No, sir. So all of this is done in the public setting. Now they have the opportunity to ask for what are referred to as debriefing meetings, and we've done that in past procurements where firms that were not selected can sit down with us, and I can walk through what was discussed in the evaluation committee, and walk them through what the evaluation committee saw as deficiencies, what they saw was the strong points, and that sort of thing. So that is available to them.
Okay, and is there any appeal process or anything like that that you have if somebody objects to that when you go through it with them?
Well, our procurement policies do outline the process. So if the short answer is I don't recall a process to object, but whatever we have in terms of our policies or in terms of our procedures are outlined in our procurement policy, which is online.
No, I think your selection committee was very, very well chosen, and so thank you.
Yes, sir.
And this doesn't preclude you from going back and doing a supplemental process in the event that you need to add more capacity, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we could always do an additional one. Say, for example, if we ended up with another, like a VRF program from the county or something like that, where we've got a workload that is going to exceed the 4 that we've got, we always have the ability to supplement through another procurement process.
Okay.
We also, when we have very specific or very large projects that don't necessarily fit into the IDC program,
Then
because
you can do a dedicated procurement just for the project.
that's exactly
Okay.
right. Yes, ma'am.
That's fine.
And I just have a question on process. So this process satisfies any of the federal procurement process requirements? So you basically are doing like a pre-RFP or RFQ, and then you can select just from these without?
That's right. So the RFQ process is the process that we use to shortlist these folks, and then we move into the actual the work authorization. But in terms of the federal review, they've TxDOT. So the way that the Fed works is that they delegate their authority down to the state DOTs. So in our case, obviously it's TxDOT. So TxDOT has been monitoring our procurement this entire way. And in fact, they review, once you all take action, I will send the results of this board action to TxDOT and request concurrence with your action. And once they give us that concurrence, then everything we've done has been blessed by the Feds on behalf, by TxDOT on behalf of the Feds. So then we know we can use these folks for any federally funded projects in the future.
That's great. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Reyes?
Are we the only ones doing this, or is this done statewide?
Well, so I can't speak statewide. I would be surprised if it's not done statewide. I do know locally it's a very common procedure. We've been doing it for a number of years. The city of El Paso does something similar. TxDOT has a rotation as well. So it's not an uncommon process, but it's very efficient, very useful. In fact,
It's a
actually,
very
we've-
common practice amongst public entities, specifically because it allows you to have expertise available immediately. So as you get projects, the key is that you rotate them. So you basically go the first one, then the second one gets the next one, and then if they can't do the project for some reason, they decline, you move. So it's a really fair system.
That's right. And again, the point, as Ms. Wilson was referring to, is really to save time. So if you notice, this procurement took from June, when the board authorized its issuance, all the way to today, just to get to the point where we select, right? We still have to negotiate the agreement, so we've still got at least another month, potentially 2 months. So we get rid of all of that procurement time using this rotation. So it's a really efficient way to do it. In fact, actually, we recently helped Socorro to develop their own rotation system, which they had never had before. So we gave them a lot of the documents to go down that path. The county is looking at doing something similar in a different program, so we'll help with that as well.
So if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item, number 4, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following documents for the Tierra Este roadway extension project. A, amendment to the interlocal agreement with El Paso County, and B, amendment to work authorization number 1 with Dannenbaum Engineering Company, El Paso LLC.
Okay. So on this one, as read into the record, it does deal with Tierra Este. This is a mile-long project out on the east side, part of the 2013 CMP program. For this particular project, we are currently in the design phase. We brought on, through our original IDC program, we brought on Dannenbaum to handle the design activities for this particular project, and they are doing that. The reason for these amendments is that the original intention for the project was to develop a 1 mile long stretch that connects Cozy Cove on the north side all the way down to Pelicano, but it had a certain width that was anticipated. After review and input from TxDOT, the width of the roadway needs to be widened, so that increases the design services that are necessary. So that's the intent of item 4. So as we normally do, the funding source for our CMP program projects is the County of El Paso. So under item 4A, we have an amendment to the interlocal providing those additional funds necessary. And then under item 4B, we have the work authorization with Danamon that's being amended to include those additional services to widen the roadway. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item.
Any questions?
Move to approve?
I have a motion.
Second?
I have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. Aye.
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 Motion passed. Item number 5, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of work authorization number 1 with HNTB Corporation for support related to potential infrastructure investment and Jobs Act opportunities.
So this item, I believe we've talked about once or twice in the past, and we certainly talked about it at the Planning Committee. The intent behind this item is to bring on one of our GEC firms, in this case it's HNTB, which would be their first work authorization, by the way. It's to bring them on to serve, to provide on-call services when we need them as they relate to infrastructure bill opportunities. So what we're envisioning here, and when you look at the scope, there's a couple of different things that they can provide to us. So one, say for example, if we went out to Horizon City, Clint, one of the smaller communities out there, and asked them, or if they needed help identifying projects that could be eligible for infrastructure bill grant opportunities in the coming years, HNTB is authorized through this work authorization to help us sort through those projects, identify the ones that make the most sense in terms of competitiveness and that sort of thing. There are other sections within the work authorization that would allow them to actually draft grant applications for us as well. So it's really intended to be a catch-all sort of on-call sort of opportunity for us to provide those services to the various communities that are looking at support. So that's really what we're intending to do here. I will mention it is an on-call general work authorization for $100,000 when and if we identify a specific task. Say, for example, Socorro wants help on a particular project to submit a grant application. We would then work up a fee and scope from the $100,000, and we would pursue it as a specific task. So much like the master and work authorization approach that we just outlined in the IDC program. So that's what we're envisioning in this one. And we do have something similar to this with Atkins that we executed many years ago. It's a general work authorization so that when we need to issue specific tasks, we can do that. So we've done the form before, and it works for us, and I think I'm particularly excited about pursuing some of these infrastructure bill opportunities with the smaller community. So we have a representative from HNTB here, should you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Otherwise, I would recommend approval of this item.
Can I ask you a related question? Have we gotten a list from the MPO yet of kind of the priority projects as part of this discussion? We talked about that subject prior to right after the last meeting.
Not yet. So we're actually now working with Eduardo directly to pull all of the smaller communities together into a meeting and start to identify and prioritize those projects. So I think that's really where we're going to get a lot of the information that we need to then utilize this work authorization.
Okay, well, I would request that you really drive that and push that, because I think it's important for us to get into the loop and into the queue as early as we can, so that we don't end up in a position where we're competing with other things because the MPO was slow to help us get all this information together.
Certainly, and I'll mention at the last. Now I can't remember if it was the policy board or the TPAC. One of the meetings of the MPO, Eduardo Calvo, actually specifically outlined this approach that he's now going to be taking, that we'll be taking together, and called out the RMA, and so we'll definitely help with that, and we'll drive it. Yes,
Okay, because for me that's a priority for us to really assist the Far East and not just the Far East, but the smaller communities who have a lot of needs, and I think there are a lot of opportunities in this infrastructure bill for them that they're going to get left behind if somebody's not really helping them take advantage of it.
Well, and to that point, I would mention also we have a meeting with Clint later this week, and we also have another meeting with the Tigua
Okay,
tribe,
awesome.
specifically bringing along Eddie Valtier from TxDOT and Mr. Calvo from the MPO. So we are definitely moving ahead.
Okay, that's really great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Just tagging on to that there, My concern all along has been, in the planning committee, we talked about this extensively. My concern is time flies. It really flies, and we find ourselves every year behind the power curve of having a deadline for submission of an application for an infrastructure bill grant of one form or another. And the fact that we only meet once a month and we get this going, and the MPO with all the things they have going, somehow we need to figure a way to keep the fire burning very hot so that we can get these things and give our engineering consultants enough time to put together a really good grant application. So we have funding issues. How do we fund that? We have all these partners that we need to deal with, the outlying communities, like Joyce said, we got TxDOT, we got all these different activities that we want to work with. And my fear again is we always end up crashing at the last minute to try to meet a deadline for a submission. So that's still a concern I've got. I don't know how to do it any different than we are, other than to comment on it every chance I get and to keep the fire burning as hot as we can. So,
Understood. I'll mention two items in response. The first is the point of this action item here today is that you will grant me the authority to make expenditures up to 100,000 to be able to move very quickly and not wait for the next board meeting. So I think this is a step in that direction. The other note I would mention is that HNTB has already provided a draft schedule of all of the different grant opportunities that came out last year and flipped it into next year using last year as a guide. So we've got some of those mile markers that we need to keep an eye on. So I think we're taking those steps and hopefully we're addressing your concern.
okay, I'd like to look at that in great detail in next planning committee meeting.
Certainly.
No, I think that would be good.
Okay.
And I appreciate your effort, Raymond. I know that we can only drive things so much, but I do think that we've established really good rapport with some of the smaller jurisdictions in the county. And I think that to the extent that we can show them some success in one or two projects early on, it'll open up a lot of windows for us to really get a lot more aggressive down the road.
Yes, ma'am. Agreed.
Okay. I move to approve.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, presentation, discussion, and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to approve certain change orders and use of force accounts for the CRRMA projects.
Yes, ma'am. So as you will recall, each month I bring to you all a list of those change orders that were approved in the prior month based on a resolution that was approved back in 2018. That resolution authorizes the executive director to approve change orders up to $100,000 with the requirement that if a change order is approved over $50,000 but under $100,000, I have to send you an immediate email and notify you of that change order. Well, in practice, we realized most recently that we were not covering force account activities under that change order resolution. What a force account activity is when, and they arise in different instances. Probably the best example is when you request a change order from a contractor and that change order price comes in higher than you anticipated. And you're not willing to pay that price because a change order is a fixed price. So then what you'll do is you'll back out and you'll say, okay, let's do this work. It needs to get done. We don't want to slow the project. Let's do this work under force account. And then the contractor and the construction manager, contractor will do the work. The construction manager monitors the work, and we're tallying actual expenses while it's happening. And so that's the use of a force account. So through the use of our change order resolution over the years, we realized, and it's not a very common activity for us, but it has come up recently, and with the intention that the whole point of the change order resolution is to keep the project moving, not to slow it down, not to wait for another board meeting. Force account is a very useful tool for us. Again, not used very often because the contractor has to keep additional records, construction manager has to keep additional records. It's not the preferred approach, but it is an approach that can be useful to us and has been in the past. The result of the force account activity, then, when it's done, all of the accounting is completed, then we package that as a change order and it is approved. But it looks different than a normal change order because it's done after the fact. So it's a little bit different. So that's why I want to make sure you all are clear when we use force account. I have provided, as part of the backup, a redlined resolution that shows you the differences between the original change order resolution from 2018 and what we're proposing to add in there for force account activities. And I'll follow the same procedure. So if we approve a force account activity that we believe is going to be in excess of $50,000, I'll notify you immediately. But most importantly, I'll be back to you at the very next meeting, just like we will be here later talking about change orders. I'll roll in force account activities as well. So hopefully that makes sense to you all. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would recommend approval of this resolution.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 7, presentation and discussion on change orders recently approved by the Executive Director for the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan and the El Paso County Passenger Shelters and Sidewalks Program.
Okay, I've got a PowerPoint for you all today. This was included as part of your backup, so you should be familiar with these items. As we just discussed in the last item, the board has passed a resolution back in 2018 that allows the executive director to approve certain change orders. In the prior month, I approved 8 different change orders, and we'll go through those here quickly. No action is required on this. This is for reporting only. The first one deals with the county passenger shelters and sidewalks program. There's some graphics to remind you about this particular project. You'll see I approved change order number 4 for just under $15,000. That's adding anti-graffiti coating to the shelters that we have under that program. We're going to talk about the shelters here in a moment, but that was that particular change order for just under $15,000. For Mission Ridge Phase 2, I approved a change order for $2,500. This was a rock wall that was completed for this project. The footing underneath the rock wall that stabilizes it was extending into a shared use path area that the developer, an adjacent developer was getting ready to construct. So we had to remove that for $2,500. Pelicano, we've got quite a few under Pelicano. We've had some activities lately, which is good news. Item 16, then, we installed 3 illumination transformers for $16,000. Number 17, off-duty sheriffs. We use the sheriffs for traffic control, so we had $4,000 worth of traffic control activities. Item 18 for $23,500 for an additional storm sewer manhole that was added. And number 19, you all approved last month. You remember that one. Number 20, then, I approved for $10,700, and this was to adjust a storm sewer inlet. There was an issue. There were some unknown utilities that were located in the stretch from Loop 375 heading over to Mission Ridge that we've had to do a complete redesign. So you'll see additional change orders coming before you related to that. So because of that design, we had to adjust a storm sewer. So that's what you see there for $10,700 under change order number 20. Number 21, then we've added days, and actually, is 21 the one that was not signed? So 21, we're going to have to push to next month. It's not really impactful because it's just a matter of adding days for work that was already completed. But we're pushing that because that has not actually been signed. We're waiting for that, but haven't received it yet. And then number 22 is flooding assistance from June. There was additional flooding, as you know, out in this area. And so we had to correct that for just over $13,000. So I believe that's the end of it. So those were the 8 change orders that were approved over the prior month. So again, no action necessary on this item, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move on to item 8, quarterly presentation, update, and discussion on the following programs or projects: A, the El Paso County Passenger Shelters and Sidewalks Program, B, the Borderland Expressway Project, and C, the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan.
So I'll be brief on these items. Item 8A then deals with the passenger shelters and sidewalks program. Those are the graphics that we have that we've brought for you all today. This one is a project that we've been talking about for quite some time. We've been working on it for a while. This program is actually an interesting one. We are working with the county on this, where they provide different funding sources, right? Whether it's local funds, some funds from the state and feds, that sort of thing. And whether it's for sidewalks or bus passenger shelters, we merge it into a single program and we manage it that way. It tends to be much more efficient. Well, very recently, I want to say last week, the county judge had a ribbon cutting for one of the very first bus passenger shelters that they've placed out there. So just as a reminder, El Paso County Regional Transit, prior to the placement of these shelters, they worked with a wave down approach, right? So if you're in the county, you're looking for service, you would wave to one of the buses coming by and they would pull over for you. The county is now standardizing their stops and placing shelters in those locations as well. So we've helped with that. If you look at the graphic in the center, you can see 115 blue dots. That's where all of the shelters will be placed by the completion of the program. We've done so far 4, and we've got 5 more that are in the works right now, and we're awaiting funding for the remaining. So we've got quite a ways to go, of course. But as you can see from the other photos, they're turning out really nicely. They've got solar-powered lighting. They've got trash cans. They've got bike parking as well. So they've turned out really nicely. We're really happy and proud to be a part of this project with the county. So just wanted to share this with you because we don't often, I was talking to the GEC about how we don't often come back to you when a project is complete and show you the results. So I want to be more thoughtful about that. So that's what this item is here under 8A. 8B then is the Borderland Expressway project, and I'll be brief on this one. I'm going to kick it over to the planning director, the planning committee chair. This is an item, as you know, we've talked about a number of times. For this particular project, there's been an interest in the RMA being more active in the project, whether it's completing design, whether it's pursuing construction activities. So one of the things that's come out of the planning committee very recently was a request to draft a letter to be submitted to TxDOT asking for a more active role. So that's what you see as your backup under item 8B. So with that as background, I'd kick it over to Mr. Smith to see if he has any input.
Yeah, for the other planning committee members, any comments are welcome. This is something that our chair challenged us as a planning committee to look at all the different projects that were out there and how we could get more actively involved and be champions for our capability to support and to do things really, really good for the region and for the community. So as we talked about before, in many cases, things have a tendency to go unrecognized when we deal informally, and so we came up with the idea to actually submit a formal letter to TxDOT expressing our very sincere desire to be actively involved in the phase 1 of the Borderland Expressway in all of its areas, but using phase 1, since it's funded, as a starting point to show our capability and what we can do, and hopefully be able to partner more with TxDOT, and also expanding that on to New Mexico, because that Borderland Expressway crosses the border and goes down New Mexico 213 and 404, and there's a lot of things that we could potentially serve to great advantage in all of that. So the first step that we're doing here is recommending that the chair sign this letter to TxDOT expressing our very definite interest in going forward with this. And our planning committee, Congressman Reyes and Mary Beth, we talked about that extensively. So thank you for all the work you did on this, Raymond.
Yes, sir. Well, with that, that takes us then to item 8C, and this is just a notation that as part of your backup, you've received the latest update on the 2013 CMP. Happy to answer any questions, but that's the agenda. That's all I have for you today.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or discussions? If not, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
I got one comment. Again, you know, Joyce talked about it and we've talked about it. We have an amazing staff and this, it's very small, but all of our consulting engineers and what you guys are able to do continually to get all this stuff done, and all these presentations and all the things you do from change orders and everything else is amazing in how well you do it all. So just,
I agree.
I'd just like to echo what Joyce said. It's,
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned at 9:41 a.m. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.